Hello there. A few days ago, I released a video which was a look back at 2023, and with a focus on my YouTube channel, I thought we would now take a look ahead, not focusing on myself or my channel, but focusing on just e-ink note-taking as a whole and where are we going in 2024. What can we expect? And this is what this video is going to speculate on. Let me just tell you at a very high level my prediction for 2024. And I think that this coming year is going to be all about incremental improvements coupled with a lot of new innovative designs coming out from various companies. That's kind of my prediction overall. Now, I'm going to go into why I'm saying that, what led me to that conclusion, because it's not just me guessing, although, of course, there's quite a bit of guesswork involved. But there is a rational basis for that assumption. And then we'll do that and paint this broad picture of the e-ink industry as a whole. And then I'm going to go through in detail what I call the big 5+2, what I think are the big movers, the most interesting movers in the industry. Get a sense of where their trajectory seems to be indicating they'll land for 2024. And then I'll throw in something kind of creative just for fun and for potential thought about what could be happening in this coming year. So I think you'll find that entertaining, highly speculative, but that's what's going to make it fun. But anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let me start with what my foundation here for all of this is. And I'm going to go back actually to the annual report that was released by e-ink, the e-ink Corporation, I think at the end of May. It might have been early June. And for those that don't know, it doesn't matter if the manufacturer is Supernote or Remarkable or Boox. They're all sourcing that e-ink screen from this one company, which is called e-ink. And they operate out of Taiwan. So reading the annual report gives a great view of the overall trend of the industry, because this one company has tremendous influence over what happens during the course of the year and in the industry as a whole. Now, a couple things about that annual report, and I do recommend reading the chairman of the board's letter. I think that's the chairman of the board of directors of e-ink. And he wrote a 5-page letter which basically outlines where they think the company is positioned and what they're looking forward to going forward. And there's two themes that were very striking as you read this 5-page letter. One is the heavy emphasis that e-ink puts on sustainability. They talk a lot about the different types of certifications and awards that they've either won or are trying to achieve in the industry. So that came out pretty significantly. And in addition to that, color was a massive area of focus. I mean, you could argue that of the 5 pages, there was almost one entire page just talking about the various color technologies that they plan to have come out or had already come out. So clearly, from a business perspective, e-ink is all in on color, and that's where I think the future is. To give a little contrast to that, if you go on to the Reddit forums and you listen to what people post there's a ton of energy on those forums around when will the next 10-inch e-ink black and white screen come out that has 300 ppi pixel density. And there's one device that has that, which is the Kindle Scribe. And people constantly ask, when can we see that in other devices, right? That's where a lot of that attention is. That didn't come up at all in this 5-page letter. So, while there are things that are important to us as individuals and things we want to focus on, there's no question that it's color that's the focus from an industry perspective. Okay, now here's the notable thing about that. So as they talk about the different technologies that they're promoting in this letter, there's 2 particular technologies they're focused on as it relates to consumer devices, specifically e-readers and e-note takers. And those 2 technologies are Kaleido 3 and Gallery 3. What's interesting about that is that we know now that Kaleido 3 has been successful on the marketplace, regardless of what you think of the technology. It is penetrating. We've seen more and more devices from multiple companies now with that technology come out. But the same can't be true from Gallery 3. In fact, I filmed a video, I think back in October, and I've yet to release it. I hope to release it soon. I just haven't had a window yet to do that. But basically, it's my obituary, or my eulogy, if you will, for the Gallery 3 technology. I mean, that's how well it went over. I mean, basically, there was one device that was released with the tech that I can recall, and it bombed. And there's been no other movement for this technology since then. And so what I filmed back in October is everything I said is still relevant. Nothing changed between then and now as it relates to Gallery 3. But here's the reason why I mention this. So e-ink's strategy is highly focused on color and specific to these commercial consumer devices around these two technologies, Kaleido 3 and Gallery 3. One of those is now out of the picture. Now the thing to understand is that this, again, was released May and June. It was about 6 months ago when this annual report went out. So e-ink's entire strategy going into 2024 was clearly pushing ahead with these two technologies in mind, and now half of that equation is essentially off the table. So what does that mean then? Well, it means that the technology that e-ink was hoping would drive future sales isn't there. Now, Kaleido 3 is there, and we expect to see more from Kaleido 3. Maybe, for example, we'll see a 13-inch Kaleido 3 screen. We haven't seen that yet. Maybe there'll be a slight iteration on Kaleido 3. Maybe there'll be a Kaleido 3 Plus, for example, where the color resolution goes from 150 ppi, at least on 10-inch screens and below, to something higher, maybe 200 ppi. Maybe. It's also possible that Kaleido has really developed as far as it can go. That's a definite realistic possibility as well. And if that's the case, we're going into 2024 with no major breakthroughs that'll be hitting the market in terms of the screen technology. Again, we'll see iterations. Maybe we will see that black and white 300 ppi on a 10-inch device. Maybe we'll see 300 ppi on a 13-inch device. Maybe we'll see Kaleido 3 on a 13-inch device. That type of thing. But still, it feels very incremental to where we've been in 2023. And so, in other words, it's not going to be the technology that's really going to push sales going forward. It's only going to be this incremental change. And can we do creative things with the pieces that we have that can bring in sales from areas that maybe we hadn't considered before? That's what I think the theme of 2024 will be. That's why I see incremental change in terms of the note-taking devices that are coming out, but sprinkled in between that, I see a lot of creative ideas, at least the potential, that might come out of nowhere. I'll give one example that did take place in 2023, which is the Boox Palma. The Boox Palma is basically a phone-sized e-reader. Nobody saw that coming until it was released, I think, in July of this past year. So I'm thinking we're going to start seeing more of those types of things going forward, because you're not going to see a lot coming from the screen technology side of the house, at least not in terms of system sellers. Okay, so in light of that, again, as I go through each company, I'll try to paint two pictures. One picture is that kind of trajectory, that incremental improvements, and see where that kind of suggests that we'll land in 2024. And then I'm going to throw in a kind of crazy, certainly an out-of-nowhere idea, which I think, though, is still consistent with how these companies have kind of operated in the past. So I see these as unusual ideas. There's no basis for them, but I think they're intriguing because they kind of fit in with the strategy these companies had generally employed in the past. So they fit, in other words, with the profiles of these companies. So I'm just doing that as a way of suggesting that here are some of the creative ways that companies might be able to release new products going forward. They're kind of entering a phase where they're kind of in the Taco Bell phase, where you've got all your ingredients are there. How can you put those together in a creative way. In addition to that, before I get into these note-taking companies, I think one trend you'll see broadly from e-ink is you'll start to see them move more into at-home screens or Internet of Things screens. Things like maybe e-ink clocks that don't look, geeky, that have, color and have style. Maybe into, thermostat displays or weather displays. Maybe, refrigerator screens and that sort of thing. I can see a lot of movement happening in that area because it's untapped potential and signage is a strength of e-ink. So I do think that's going to be a theme we'll start to see. Maybe we'll even start to see art where you have maybe photo frames or pictures or paintings that are displayed on e-ink, particularly in smaller screen sizes where it's affordable and you can leverage the technology for that purpose. So that's my prediction for e-ink as a whole, is to move more into the home space. But I do believe that we're going to see innovation from these major note-taking companies, and I'll point to two reasons why before we get into the companies themselves. So the first thing is, if you go back to that annual report from e-ink, and you look at the financial statements, the consolidated financials, they're very good. E-ink had a great year last year, that is the last fiscal year that they reported on results. And they're clearly in a very strong position, and they're looking for growth, and the company is just in really good shape. So that's one key aspect that bodes well for the future and for future development. The other one, more anecdotal, I agree, but I think it's telling, and I'm going to put this table up on the screen. This is basically measuring the number of subreddit subscribers to these various channels. So you have the Kindle channel has, now 258,000 people subscribe. Remarkable has about, almost 48,000, and so on. I include Mobiscribe and Bigme on this list. They are very small players, but the reason why I include them here and why I'll talk about them is I think they play very unique roles in the industry, and so they're notable to me outside of the big five. That's why I include them here despite their small size. But the numbers themselves aren't what's important. The percentages are. And what those percentages represent is the change in subscribers from when I did this survey back in July, that's 6 months ago, to now. Those percentage changes represent significant growth. So my point of all this is I think that there is a marketplace and a driver for companies to be creative and to try to move into spaces they haven't moved before. So I think that not only are the pieces of technology there, I think the impetus and interest for a lot of these companies to do something different is there as well. And I think that will culminate, especially in light of a lack of additional technology around color, it'll culminate in some pretty interesting things in 2024. So that's my thesis, and that's my broad strokes view. Now let's go company to company and see my thoughts about how each one will play out in 2024. So we're going to start with Amazon, and Amazon is such an intriguing player in this space. Intriguing because obviously, Amazon is synonymous with e-readers. If they wanted to be a major player in the e-note-taking space, they could be. It's just a matter of will. But there's a question of whether they have that will. Was the Kindle Scribe really there just to promote book sales and to compete with Kobo, who had released an e-reader with note-taking? Or was it there as part of a larger strategy to eventually move into the enterprise, for example? It's not clear. What we do know is that the Scribe was released in November of 2022. So it's been over a year now, and there hasn't been an update. There have been software updates, and a couple of those have been quite notable. But the Kindle still lags well behind other major players in the note-taking space in terms of number of features that they have on their device. There's a lot of speculation that there'll be, a Kindle Scribe 2. And certainly toward the end of this year will have been 2 years removed from the release of the original Kindle Scribe. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to basically assume that there will be a sequel given that time frame. But then I could also easily see that there won't be anything released by Amazon. And quite frankly, I feel very 50-50 about this. And I don't have any particular insights outside of that. No one really knows what Amazon is going to do in this space. And that makes them a bit of an X factor, frankly. They could completely ignore it, or they could really move aggressively into it, and it's just not clear. All right, so that's basically reading their current trajectory. Now, if I want to come up with a creative idea for Amazon, here's my pitch. How about a new line called the Kindle iFriendly? And this will basically be a 10-inch e-ink screen as part of a laptop PC, whether it's running Windows or whether it's running Amazon's Fire OS or what have you, I don't know. But basically moving a little bit more into the computer space. We've seen a number of companies make that move. We've seen Boox and Remarkable combine their tablets with a keyboard to essentially come up with a laptop equivalent. So Amazon, I think I could visualize them going full speed right into a laptop, using the Kindle branding to try to draw attention, playing off of the iFriendly aspects of the technology. So to me, that's my guess in terms of their creative idea for 2024. So let's talk a little bit about Kobo. And Kobo has some of the same kind of mystery and question marks with Amazon, but with a little bit of a difference in that they have a little bit more of a track record in releasing note-taking devices. It was actually in 2023 that they released their Ellipsa 2, which was a sequel to a device that had been released 2 years earlier. So you can start to see a bit of a pattern there, and that would imply that we won't see any action from Kobo this year, given that we're not yet a year removed from the release of their last note-taking device. Furthermore, if Amazon isn't pushing them in a direction to release another device, and that doesn't seems to be the Ellipsa 2 was the response to the Kindle Scribe, then that implies they won't release anything either. My gut feeling is there's a greater chance than not that we won't see anything new from Kobo, and that if we do see something, it'll be in 2025. So that seems to be where the trajectory is. Now, for my creative idea for Kobo, I'm predicting a new branded e-reader called the Paper Thin. This will be a 10-inch tablet. It will be the thinnest e-reading tablet at the 10-inch size, and they'll again brand it as the Paper Thin, as one of the thinnest e-reading experiences for people that like large screens, but with a device that is still comfortable to hold in one hand. So that is my creative prediction for Kobo, and it'll be a black and white screen. So there you go. All right, let's talk a little bit about Mobiscribe. And Mobiscribe is one of the two, when I say the big 5 plus 2. It's a very small player, but I focus on them and I include them because they have such a unique position in the marketplace. Most people in the e-note taking space are really trying to perform in kind of the premium area of the market with high quality devices or sophisticated note-taking apps and what have you. Mobiscribe has a sophisticated note-taking app. It's actually surprisingly good, but it is a generation behind in terms of the screen. It's not quite as premium. It's still a good device. It's not a cheap device, but it's not at the level of a Boox, of a Supernote, and so on. So they fill a gap that between e-readers and e-note takers that most other companies don't fill because of the price point of their products. They released 2 products in 2023. Their Wave product, both a black and white and a color version. It's not clear how they're doing. And, I can see that Mobiscribe either doing really well and starting to gain a lot of traction in the marketplace to completely going out of business. I mean, they're just that there's a lot of potential in either extreme direction. So I don't have any particular predictions for what they might release. In terms of reading kind of the past, they don't have a long history of releasing devices. I think the Waves were their second and third devices that they've ever released after the Origin. I might have that a bit wrong, but that's what my memory tells me. So I'm not clear what they might do in 2024. However, I do have a creative idea for them. Now, I'm playing off the fact that they are in this unique niche space, and what they really are trying to do, from my perspective anyway, from a marketing perspective, is they're trying to grab people who are really into e-readers and transition them into the e-note-taking space. Mobiscribe is not going after people who are buying books, products, Supernotes, what have you. Those are people in the premium space, and they wouldn't want to go down to a more budget-friendly place in most cases. They're looking to grow the marketplace overall by bringing new entrants in. And the best way they can do that is by releasing another product with note-taking, but at a much lower price point. So I introduce to you the Mobiscribe Jot. This will be a 6-inch note taker. That might even be the first 6-inch note taker on the marketplace. It'll come in black and white and in color, and it'll sell somewhere in the $150 range. And it'll be just for jotting down little notes, little to-do lists, and what have you. It'll be very portable. It will basically fill a niche that e-note-taking devices don't fill currently, and it will expand on this strategy of trying to grow the marketplace for people who have Kindles, essentially, and who don't have e-note-taking devices. So that's my prediction for them, and I hope they do it, and I hope they have a lot of success with it, because they do, I think, perform or fill a very valuable part in the marketplace. They're also in my home state of California, so you got to root for the home team. I don't know anybody from Mobiscribe. I don't have any connections with those folks, but just on a sentimental level, and because I am impressed with what they've done so far with their Wave products, I am rooting for them. So anyway, that's my creative prediction for them for 2024. Let's talk Bigme. Bigme is a really interesting company. I like to think of Bigme as Boox's little brother. It's a company that really fills basically the same space as Boox from a marketing perspective, but they haven't been around as long as Boox. Their products aren't as sophisticated as Boox, and they're trying to catch up. They've done a lot of great work this year in doing that, but it's also clear in that process what their strategy is. I mean, they have to find ways to make their products unique, and there were a number of examples where they were creative last year in doing so. They were the company that released the Galley, which was the Gallery 3 device. They were the first to market, and actually only to market, as far as I'm aware, with the Gallery 3 technology. So that's one example of them being aggressive and trying to push into a new space. They also integrated, AI into their products. They're learning using these language models. I don't know if they used ChatGPT specifically or something similar to that, but they did have apps on their devices that allowed you to generate text and images and then to import those into notes. So they were very creative in that space. And at the end of the year, they did a Kickstarter campaign around not only a color e-ink monitor. They were the second to market, at least with that pre-sale concept, but they're the first and remain only to the market with an all-in-one PC. And I say to market, but I mean they ran their campaign, and presumably these the first devices will roll out in January. So you can see a lot of examples of where Bigme is trying to be very aggressive in order to find whatever advantage they can have going forward. So that's been their MO, and I certainly expect that to continue. Very similar to Boox, they release a lot of devices during the course of the year. So we expect a number of devices from them, mostly around incremental improvements. A lot of them will feature Kaleido 3 and what have you. So what is my creative idea for a company that's already creative? I introduced to you the M6 smart home display. Why M6? I have no idea. I don't know how they number any of their products, so it sounded good to me. But a smart home display seems like in the line of doing something very different, using an e-ink screen, which would be unique, and would try to carve a niche that nobody else has yet. That seems pretty consistent with what Bigme's trying to do. Maybe a little bit outside of their general core competence around these consumer devices, but Doesn't seem like that crazy of an idea compared to what they've done in the past. So that is my thoughts around Bigme. When it comes to books, it's not hard to look at the trajectory of that company. In the last 4 years, they've released each year 6 to 8 products across their different lines, whether it's 6, 7, 8, 10, or 13-inch devices. They've released multiple iterations every year. That's going to continue. There's no question about it. They'll probably release multiple versions of their 10-inch screens, much like they did in 2023, and we'll see a lot of incremental improvements along those lines. So I think in a lot of ways, Boox is fairly predictable. If I'm continuing to read the tea leaves on their past, it's hard to imagine them not being in the color e-ink monitor market for very long. It's just hard to imagine they're not going to release a screen. Daesung and Bigme are releasing screens in the early part of the year. I just don't think that Boox will be that far behind. And that's pretty much my using the past prediction for them going into 2024. So what's the creative idea? I introduced to you the Connect 3. That's Konnect 3, the first Kaleido 3 phone. It'll be released in China only, at least at first iteration, but that will be where they blaze a trail. They'll be using their technology and their learnings from the Boox Palma to make the jump into the phone space. And eventually, depending on how that does, maybe we'll see something similar in the Western markets as well. So that's my creative idea for Boox. Seems plausible to me. We'll see what happens. Of all the companies I'm talking about, Supernote is perhaps the most predictable. It's pretty much laid out in front of us. They just released their 7 or 8-inch rather e-note-taking device, the Nomad, or the A6X2. They've already announced that they'll be releasing soon, although I don't believe there's a date on this yet, but the A5X2, but we certainly expect that in the first half of 2024. And on the farther horizon, potentially be released in 2024, but it might spill over into 2025, is the Supernote A4X2, which would be their first foray into a 13-inch space device. And that's actually what I'm looking forward to the most, is the release of that device and what they can do in the 13-inch space, particularly because they've nicknamed this the Slim, or at least used the Slim moniker in conjunction with this device, indicating that they're looking for something not only with a large screen, but a slim profile. Very interesting, and something that, for me, could end up being replacing my A5X, which is my daily driver. So that's something I'm keen to keep an eye out on. But I don't see much else happening with Supernote. They're very... they do a good job in communicating where they're going and what their plans are, and so it's not hard to predict what will happen with them. Nevertheless, I decided to go ahead and put a creative idea for them as well, and I introduced to you the Supernote Sketchbook. Essentially, the Supernote Sketchbook will be 2 Nomad devices hinged together. So when you unfold the device, you will still only have 2 slide bars on each side, and the e-ink screen will run as close as it can to the middle. It won't be seamless, but it'll be very close, and it'll be their unfoldable version of those devices, with an emphasis on drawing as well as on note-taking, and there'll be tweaks to their UI in order to take best advantage of that form factor. So my prediction, the one I'm least confident about of all these crazy ideas that are coming out of nowhere, is the sketchbook idea, but why not? So then that leaves us with the last of the big 5+2, which is the Remarkable. And the Remarkable 2 has been out for quite a while now. It's been out for a number of years. There's a lot of speculation that we're on the verge of getting a Remarkable 3. Nothing official out that I'm aware of, though. So that's really more rumors and buzz in the community than it is anything from Remarkable. So it's hard to say. We do know that Remarkable has a long track record of not releasing devices. They've only released 2 in their company's history that I'm aware of. So we're either going to see one thing or we're not going to see anything this year. What we thought would be the Remarkable 3 in the recent past has been changes to their software, as well as that keyboard attachment we talked about earlier. So it's hard to say. I'm not really sure what to believe as it relates to Remarkable. But that didn't stop me from coming up with a creative idea for them as well. And I introduced to you the Pocket Remarkable. This is going to be an 8-inch note-taking device that they'll brand, again, as the Pocket Remarkable. And that's my creative prediction for them. Low chance that that will come to pass, but why not? And maybe they'll even do that in lieu of a Remarkable 3, holding on to their existing technology, or their existing form factor, rather, which hasn't dated a bit. It still looks fabulous, but just trying to open up the market by moving into a new space. All right, well, I hope you found that entertaining. I tried to do a mix of what were some reasonable extrapolations based on the history of various companies and of the industry as a whole. But for sure, in my mind, 2024 is going to be the year of creative products, and there'll be at least 2 or 3 of these things coming out. Who knows what they'll end up being? I've given some ideas of what they could be for each company. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But I do think that this could be a very creative year because it needs to be. The technology is not going to cover up. Incremental improvements won't bring in the sales I think a lot of these companies want. So the landscape is ripe for some of these creative ideas, and we'll see how that goes. All right, I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll see you then.